Hey everyone, and welcome to the Monetize Your Expertise podcast. I'm your host, Grant Weherley, the online course guy helping you every week to monetize your expertise. Just go to myepodcast.com for tools and links and more for all episodes. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Monetize Your Expertise podcast. Today I'm here with Danny Flood, who's author of 5 #1 Amazon best-selling books. He's been traveling the globe for 5+ years, and he's the host of the Open World podcast and also blogs at openworldmag.com. Thanks for joining me today, Danny.
Hey, Grant. It's always good to connect with a friend, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, no worries. I'm excited to launch in a couple of things. And the first place to start, I think, is I know a lot of people who are digital nomad types. They run businesses while traveling the world, and the amount with which people actually do interesting travel things actually varies greatly. And that's one thing that I've always noticed and appreciated about you is that you've done a lot of really cool travel things while also running an online business. So can you talk a little bit about some of the places you've been and some cool experiences you've gotten from that?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't become a digital nomad just so that I could work from a laptop in exotic places. You know, that wasn't really what kind of fired me up about this lifestyle. I would read books like, 4-Hour Workweek and just like imagine all of these like really cool adventures that I could do like in South America or like in Myanmar or something like this. I would just read stories of like famous travelers, historically and just like digital nomads, location independent entrepreneurs. And it just fired me up so much that I was like, I have to do this. I don't want to be sitting here at home, kissing up to people I don't even like for a paycheck. So I basically just started doing the dreamlining exercise from the 4-Hour Workweek, like actually doing it. And I got some of my friends together and we kind of did it all together so that we could keep each other accountable. And I would just, write the things I dreamed about, being, having, and doing, and then just the steps, that I need to make it happen. So I've done really some, really cool things. I backpacked all over South America, all over Asia and Central America. I did tango dancing for a while. I've done Muay Thai boxing in Bangkok. I spent some time in Brazil doing like windsurfing, celebrated Carnival out there. I've done like, I rode a sailboat. I don't know if I rode a sailboat. I directed a sailboat. I don't know what the correct verb is. I sailed a sailboat. Across like the South China Sea, leaving from Cambodia. I went to like did a bunch of island hopping down there. Just whale shark diving in the Philippines, stuff like that. I did a few motorbike trips, like one across Vietnam and then bicycle trip across Mexico, which was amazing. Just a great experience. Something everybody should do. Just take on an epic adventure, that just really takes you out of your comfort zone and just disconnect and reconnect with yourself and with your environment.
Nice. And I'm curious, so when we all set goals like, I want to go whale shark diving in the Philippines, and we imagine that and we do some kind of dreamlining exercises for that, I've noticed just sort of internally my own mental process with regards to this. When I set a goal like that to do something really, really cool, there's this kind of, there's like this feeling behind it, like life will be better once I've done that. And it's very subconscious and subtle. And then one thing I've realized is that through going and doing cool things, they're very inherently valuable. But then afterwards, like life is very much the same. And that experience was really interesting to me, how that comes about. So I'm curious to get a little bit, I guess, deep here is like, how is the experience of doing those types of interesting things compared or contrasted with your perception of what they would actually be like?
Yeah, sure. So, you reach this point where you're living out your dream and it's like, this is everything I imagined. And then it's over. And then you're like, well, what do I do next? And for me, I just feel like whatever I do next, I want it to be bigger than whatever I've already done. So the way that manifested for me is that, I started backpacking. I was in Southeast Asia for 6 months. I hit like 8 countries or something like this. And I was doing these motorbike trips and stuff. And then I was like faced with the prospect of going back and settling into a normal life. And I just realized that I just can't do this. I went back to the US and after like 6 months there, I was like, I have to escape again. I don't want to live like this because I think that when you travel, when you're abroad for a month, so many things can happen to you. A month can feel like a year in terms of the connections you make, in terms of the experiences you have. And you could spend a year at home and not remember anything significant that actually happened, except maybe you see your friends at a birthday party, or maybe somebody gets married, or maybe there's a funeral and you see your family. I never see my family except like if somebody dies, unfortunately. So yeah, but I think that there's definite value in realizing those dream goals, even if you feel like you haven't gained something, because I feel like they expand your sphere of comfort, and you're able to do more. It builds up your confidence. It builds up your, I guess, you build reference experiences, which help you to do more in the game of life. And to make them happen, I think the key is just to open yourself up to opportunities, and they will come to you. And when the opportunities come, just say yes. Just do it, and you're going to gain something from it. Whether it's internally, whether it's new friends and a great new experience, or whether it's business wise. You get a new income stream, or you learn something and you get some good business contacts. So just put yourself out there, open yourself up to opportunity. When it comes, just say yes. Always err on the side of action. That's what I say.
Nice. And I definitely agree with you that there's a ton of inherent value in the kind of lifestyle of traveling, having a large variety of experiences, experiencing a lot of different cultures, meeting a lot of different people, having a lot of unique experiences. There's just a kind of growth which comes from that. But I guess the place where that question kind of arises from is I've noticed that a lot of people who live this kind of lifestyle, they have the goal of getting out of the United States to see one specific country. And then they do that and they're like, cool, I want to see 3 more. And then they want to see 5 more. And then they just want to hit every single country on earth. And then it's almost like this, it's like the rat race, but it's just for digital nomad types. You know what I mean? They get stuck in that, I need a ever increasing amount of unique travel experiences, and I need to accumulate that people try to accumulate white picket fences back home. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are about that. Is this something you've noticed, and how do you avoid that? Or is that something you're not worried about avoiding at all?
Yeah, I noticed that there's a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses, and a lot of people kind of comparing themselves to one another. I think it's really important that you don't compare yourself to anyone, because everyone has their own unique experiences. They have a unique path to get where they are or to get to where they're going. So just because if I have a podcast and I have maybe 25,000 listeners, but somebody else has a podcast and he's got 5 million listeners, that's great for him. I don't need to be envious of his success. I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing, and that's the most important thing. I'm going to be better than the version of me that I was yesterday, and as long as you just keep improving, just keep growing and evolving, I mean, you can't go wrong. And I think that's really just the key to living out your potential. And that's one of the reasons why my books are always I always write about hacks, because I'm always trying to implement ways to get more leverage, so that I can accomplish more with less effort, and just do more and be more, really.
Good stuff. And so now I know you've published a lot of different books. You're on a lot of different channels. Tell me a bit about how you got into specifically Amazon, and I guess just what the process looked like for you entrepreneurially, if that's a word, to get into Amazon publishing, and how that's gone for you.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, when I started writing a book, I mean, I had a lot of question marks in my head. It was after I backpacked for 6 months in Southeast Asia, and I got in this accident in Malaysia where I fell from this bridge, broke my foot, broke a few teeth.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I was on crutches for 2 months. I was in Kuala Lumpur for a month, just in bed every day in a hostel. It was pretty low. And after that, I decided that I was going to quit my agency business because I didn't enjoy the work that much. And the next step I realized was that I wanted to write a book and kind of give back and share the knowledge that I'd learned in my journey. But then I'd never written a book before. When I started writing, it was so difficult for me that I was using my iPhone, and I would talk into my iPhone using drag and dictate or something like that, just because I didn't want to sit in front of a computer and type. I was at a point where I had a 10-hour work week with my agency, and I was outsourcing a lot of stuff. And I was like, I don't want to sit at a computer when I can be outside, exploring the jungle or something like this. So it was really tough for me to write at first. And the book took about a year of work, maybe more, just putting together drafts. And I threw out all my early drafts. And eventually it came together. And the first book, it took a lot of work. And I learned a lot. I didn't exactly launch it the right way. But then after that, I decided I was going to keep writing, because I learned so much. And I did 4 book launches that I didn't quite launch them the right way. I didn't know how to do book launch. And then the 5th one, which my most recent one is called Hack Sleep. I launched the right way, and it's really taken off. It's selling right now, average about 35 copies a day. Whereas before, I might sell 4 or 5 copies a day of a book. So that was really big, and I'm just really excited by how things have evolved and how I keep getting better at my processes and my systems. So I'm looking to publish more books and also publish more information products. So I have a sleep hacking course I'm doing on Udemy, and I think that if you're going to write a book, while that material is still fresh in your head, you should think about other ways that you can kind of repurpose that content or package it for a different platform. So that might be like a Udemy course, because the material is still fresh in your head. It's going to be really easy to do the course. If you try to come back to it like 3 months later, 6 months later, you already have other things going on. It's going to be really hard to do that.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that methodology of, especially books and courses pair well, really, really well together. It's very easy to turn one into the other and leverage that.
Yeah.
Especially on different platforms. Like you've got the Udemy marketplace with tons of people there, and you got the Amazon marketplace with tons of people there, and you can connect that together with your own audience. And you got this interesting little web of visitorship and customers going on. It's good stuff. So tell me how your process evolved for launching a book from, I guess, the first time you did it to the most recent time that you did it.
Yeah, sure. So when I published my first book, it's called Buy Your Own Island, and it's a big book. It's about 330 pages. I kind of made sure, like, I read everything I could out there. I did a lot of preparation, but I had no idea what was going to happen when I pressed launch, and I was kind of like a little bit nervous to launch it. One strategy that worked really well is I sent a lot of copies to beta readers to kind of get them to know that the book exists and kind of just get them to write reviews. I still do that a lot. I'll email my list and get a lot of beta readers before the book launches. And then when I send an email to my list, I have about 1,000 people on my list, so I'll get maybe like 150 emails back asking to see an advanced copy of the book, and I get a lot of good feedback that way. I get a lot of initial reviews once the book launches that way. But when I did the first book, I did a free launch because I figured I didn't have any readership. Nobody knew who I was. But I learned that you really have to really get into Amazon's paid charts as a bestseller in order to really rank well and to have sustained sales over time. And that's one of the reasons why so many authors right now are doing like 99-cent promotions, and they're even keeping their books at like $2.99, occasionally $3.99. But if you look at authors like Dan Norris or another guy I interviewed, Patrick King, from my podcast, Mark Messick, they'll keep their books at $2.99 because when you increase the price of your book, you're going to decrease sales. And once you get your book, like you do a promotion, you do a 99-cent promotion, and you get a lot of sales within the first week, that's really, really important. Once it happens, you need to keep your book at 99 cents for like 2 weeks after it launches, maybe 2-3 weeks or so. You're going to get a lot of sales. And if you get a sustained sales at 99 cents, Amazon's going to rank you really highly, and you're going to show up in the hot new releases section, which is really, really important. And once that happens and you're recognized as a bestseller with Amazon, then you can kind of increase the price. I increased mine to $2.99. The sales dropped, but the revenue's gone up.
Nice, good stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of different Amazon authors, and it sounds like the process is, maybe it takes a little bit of trial and error, but actually it's just not really that complicated. It's surprisingly not as difficult as you think it would be to launch a bestseller. It's just like, write a good book, give it out to some people, get some reviews, launch it for free, launch it for cheap, and then just scale it up from there. And it's really interesting platform, and I think it's so cool how I guess book publishing is so much easier than it used to be. It's very freeing, I think, to people, all the different people who have a really cool message to share with others.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it really is easy, and Amazon's not that difficult to figure out. And there's one hack that's worked really well for me is to schedule a BuckBooks promotion. If you can do like a BuckBooks promotion, like within the first few days that your book is out, that's a really good way to drive a lot of paid sales. There's also a lot of like newsletter sites out there that you can submit your book and trying to promote a 99-cent promotion. So it's really not that hard. I mean, as long as you can get a spike in paid sales within the first week and just get like sustained sales over the first couple weeks, then you have a good chance of just ranking really highly and doing pretty well.
Good stuff. And I know Amazon Books is not the only thing that you're working on. I know one of your new projects is Open World Magazine. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So I have a blog, I have a podcast, and then I'm about to launch a digital magazine. I'm about to launch Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. A Udemy course, sorry. My goal really right now is I'm trying to get out on as many platforms as I can, just to increase my visibility as much as possible, and just kind of build up my readership. Because if I find if I find readers through Amazon, they come and read my books, there's some podcasts. So I want to get out in every single market that I can. And so I know one really good opportunity is with the digital magazines. I have a friend who runs Founder magazine. It's a digital magazine, and he's doing between 120 to 150K this year just with his digital magazine. And what's worked really well for him is Instagram. So that's an example of another platform where users are that I need to get on. But he's got 450,000 followers on Instagram, and a lot of those, kind of convert over to the digital magazine, and he's getting all that revenue just through subscriptions. So I know that there's people out there that are killing it. I can see the model that there is to follow, and I just know my way forward is I want to create really valuable content, and I just want to get out on all these platforms where the users already are, where the readers already are, and when you just look at that as like your way forward, it's just so liberating because you don't have to second guess every decision. You don't have to realize, well, is this good investment? Just keep putting stuff out there, keep attracting new readers, keep doing podcasts, keep doing guest blog posts. Just get as much visibility as possible. Keep creating great products, and once you realize that that's going to help you grow your readership and your sales over time, then it's really liberating. So you know what you have to do every single day.
Yeah, I think the concept and the strategy of creating really valuable content is a really solid one. I've found that when I've incorporated that more intentionally into my own business, even though I kind of always wanted to, but I was like a little bit worried about, it's a big investment of time to create really nice content on like a blog or a podcast or what have you. And there's no real guarantee of immediate return because it is a lot more of a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found it's extremely valuable once you invest in that. And I've even seen really, really high-end consultants who charge like, hundreds of thousands of dollars per client for large corporate clients, leveraging content to show that they're an expert in a specific industry. So the power of content is actually very much still there and very valuable, even if the return is not clear up front. But I'm curious about how the business model. I've actually not really familiar with the concept of a digital magazine. I've never been a fan of magazines myself, so it's not something I know anything about. But I'm curious, how do you actually structure that business model? Because honestly, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's really simple. So there are platforms out there like Magloft and Magcast, and the way it works is it's like similar to a CMS system where you just upload a PDF and they convert it to different platforms for iOS, Android, Google Play, that kind of stuff. And I like the magazine because I have really good control over the format. I have more control versus like a blog, for example. And as far as what I can put in there, and there's also the perceived value factor. If I have premium content that people are willing to pay for, I like to have like different products in my pipeline, that are just different value. And then I have high-end stuff. I want to have high-end stuff. I want to have low-end stuff. So this will be kind of like a tripwire where someone can pay $1.99 or $2.99, cost of a cup of coffee. Say that 3 times fast. And just, a lot of the people that, subscribe, they get free stuff from me, and then maybe they'll upsell to $1.99, $2.99. A lot of them become consulting clients. I'm doing a author hangout, which I talked with you about, where they pay $150 to join for that. And then, I want to have more higher end stuff at the back end. So, it's like I said, I'm just trying to get all the content out there, try to repurpose stuff as much as possible. I do all the content myself, so it can be a lot of work, but then I have certain things I'll do to kind of make things more efficient. Like, for example, I might take some content from my books and then put it on my blog as like a teaser to kind of get people interested in the book. If I'm doing podcasting, one thing that really helps is I'll try to prepare the show notes while I'm doing the interview. So I'll mute my mic, and then if the guest says something interesting, I'll write it down. And then I have the bullet points that I can just add to the show notes, because listening to an interview again and doing the show notes takes a lot of time. If I'm doing a digital magazine, I find what works really well is I'll go to Graphic River, and there's a lot of really great magazine templates there. So I can purchase one for like $7, $8, and I have all the pages already laid out for me. So I can just insert my own photos, just customize it how I want. I have basically a theme, a template, and that saves me a lot of time. So, content marketing, obviously, it can be very time consuming, but if you're really smart about it and you can, leverage these hacks and just kind of get through it faster, you can accomplish a lot more. And I think there's a great opportunity there.
Absolutely. And actually, I came across another really good idea about how to better spread your content without really producing any extra. Really, really clever. This was from Russell Brunson, basically talking about sending essentially story-based emails to your list and then making sure to put those up as blog posts on your blog. So then it's basically like dual purpose. Like you're emailing your list, you're maybe pitching something at the end of it, but it's also then content for your blog. Get the SEO benefits as well. I was like, oh, wow, I never thought of doing that. It seems so obvious. But yeah, it's a really great idea.
That's a great point. I've actually done that myself. Like if you do a broadcast to your list, that has a shelf life of just that broadcast, So you send it out to your list and then it's over. So you just wrote that up and then only for one-time use. What I actually did once is I did a guest post for my book Hack Sleep on a site called The World of Lucid Dreaming. And then I took that guest post and then I converted it to a broadcast for my mailing list. And I got comments, back from that email that said, wow, this is the best email you've ever sent. And it was just like, 5 hacks to improve the quality of your sleep. And so I wrote that for a guest post. And then I just took that guest post and then sent it to my mailing list. And I find also, like, if I'm having a conversation on a podcast, like this one, for example, and some good ideas come from it, I'll take those ideas and then use that as a basis of a new blog post.
Nice, good stuff.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you've got a lot of different things in the work. And so one thing which I think is a careful balance to consider is there's a lot of different platforms out there. There's an infinite number of things you can be doing within content marketing, within online business in general. So how do you balance between, like you mentioned before, being visible on all these different platforms and also focusing and doubling down and scaling intentionally a single platform? How do you balance between the two of those?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I guess it kind of comes down to how you manage your time. But I'm really kind of analytical about how I organize my schedule and how I organize my to-do list. So I could talk a little bit about that, but we're kind of getting into productivity. Is that something you're interested in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, I think there's a conflict between being focused and being ever present in the online world, right? So How do you balance your personal time between those two things? Do you, err on the side of diversity, or do you err on the side of focus, or do you try and nail both? And how do you go about that, et cetera?
Well, you've mentioned before that you're introverted, and I think that's something like creation. Creative work is the opposite end of the spectrum versus like, writing outreach emails or marketing, for instance. So what I do is the way I break down my to-do list is I'll have 3 levels of work, so I'll have level 1 work, which is my highest priority stuff. It's usually like writing content, creating videos, stuff like that. I'll reserve that for the periods when I'm the most focused. And then I have other things like, level 2 work, which is more like replying to emails, posting things on social media groups, sharing my content on different platforms. That doesn't require a high level of alertness. Maybe outlining for a particular blog post if I just have some ideas I want to write down. And then I have level 3 work, which is basically like copy and paste type stuff. It doesn't really require a lot of engagement. And if you read my book Hack Sleep, I'm really big on this concept of the circadian rhythm. And I'm actually doing a polyphasic sleep schedule right now where I sleep about 4 or 5 hours a night. And I try to align the activities I'm doing to the peaks in my circadian rhythm. So like in a normal circadian rhythm, you have your peak in alertness at around 10 a.m. That's when your alertness goes high, and then it starts to dip when your body temperature dips. And the lowest point is at 3 p.m. So that's when I try to incorporate, period of renewal, try to rest for 30 minutes, take a nap, and then it will go back up again at 6 p.m. That's when the testosterone gets high. So I find that when I can align my activities to how my circadian rhythm functions, I can get a lot more done. I can be a lot more productive. It's like, writers, they say like when they're in the zone, they can do like 2,000 words before breakfast. But when they have that writer's block, it's usually because their energy is going down, their rhythm is going down, and then they can write like 200 words after like 2 hours. So I find that by aligning my day to match that circadian rhythm, and if you want to learn more about circadian rhythm, you can check out my book. It's $2.99, or you can just Google it. There's a chart on Wikipedia. I find that to be really helpful, and just being able to structure what I'm doing to that helps me to get a lot more done.
Yeah, that makes sense in terms of structuring your tasks, in terms of how difficult it is versus how much energy you have. How do you break down your time management schedule in terms of the different projects that you have?
Honestly, I'm pretty much always working if I have any free time. I'm either like always working or I'm playing. I don't really just like have a lot of downtime. If I have downtime, I'll spend it resting. So I've done like productivity experiments where I will go to the Bangkok SkyTrain and turn that into my remote office, for example, because I noticed that I'm really productive when I'm on like a train or something or a plane, and I get really tired of sitting around doing nothing when I'm trying to commute across Bangkok. I lose 25 minutes of my day either which way. So I'll pop up my laptop and I can get stuff really done really fast that way. I don't have any Wi-Fi, so I have nothing to distract me. So, anytime that I can kind of squeeze in, like get more of a project done or get a project started, I'll do that. I find that to be really helpful.
Nice. So now you've gone through a lot of different projects, a lot of different phases. You had this goal of being able to travel the world and do the online business thing. And so now you've accomplished that. You've had all kinds of interesting experiences all around the world, South America, Asia, Central America, etc. What's the next major life goal for you? Like, is there something in particular that you have in your mind somewhere that you're really working towards that really inspires you?
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest difference I can make is with the magazine that I'm publishing, and I just want to try to give back to other people and kind of inspire them and push them to make the leap so that they can transform their own life. That's really what's driving me right now. I can go, I'm planning to go to Myanmar next month. I can go there. I can go to India or Nepal. But then the only person who really gets to enjoy that experience is me. So if I can do more with my work, then I can multiply what I'm doing with my life so that a lot of people can benefit from what I'm doing. So I think that, to engage in something that brings you pleasure, that's awesome. But no one's going to enjoy that except for you, and it doesn't last forever. Like Tony Hsieh says that there's 3 P's of happiness: pleasure, passion, and purpose. So pleasure is the easiest to get. I mean, you can buy a bottle of wine, but it doesn't last very long. Passion, it lasts a little bit longer, but it's a little bit harder to acquire. Maybe like if you enjoy playing the piano or dancing. But then your purpose, I mean, that's really like, it takes a lot of work to really get engaged in that, but I think it brings the most lasting benefit and satisfaction. So that's kind of where I'm at. I engage in a lot of things that brought me a lot of pleasure and passion, and I want to I think scaling it up to the next level is just having your purpose front and center, and just giving everything you have to that.
Nice, good answer. That's good stuff. I like that. And so one of your focuses that you just mentioned now is helping other people sort of break out and pursue those kinds of things. So what advice would you have to somebody who might be interested in something along the lines of what you're doing, whether that's the travel side of things or the online business side of things? What would you recommend to them in terms of best practices of getting started with that?
Yeah, sure. So I think it really just starts with yourself. You have to have an honest conversation with yourself, and you have to really know yourself and what really fires you up. I think the reason that a lot of us aren't doing more is that we don't ask good questions. So, for example, you might hear some advice on a podcast that says, "Oh, you should do a morning ritual." And so, if you decide like, "Oh, I'm going to do a morning ritual," you don't have a strong foundation for doing that. You're just doing it because someone else told you to. Or, you should go to the gym. It's January. You should work out, and it's like, okay, I should do that, but why am I doing it? It's just like doing going to a job. Why would you do that? So I think the key is you need to start with your why. So like if I say, why should I do a morning ritual, for example, and then I'll answer it. So I'll say, because every morning when I wake up, it's really hard to get started, and I could spend 2 or 3 days unproductively. But if I do a morning ritual to kind of get my mind going, I can get back 2 or 3 hours of my day. Or if I want to go to the gym, I'll say, why do I want to go to the gym? Because I want to have more energy. I want to feel great. I want to look great. I want to have a 6-pack. So if you have enough reasons why propping up what you want to do, then you're going to adhere to it. You're going to be able to push through the obstacles. You're going to keep going. Let's say I want to learn how to make money online. Why? Because you want fast money? No. Because I want to have freedom to do the things I like. Because I want to make an impact. Because I want to be my own boss. So if you have those reasons why, they're going to carry you through, and you're going to reach the other side.
Really good advice. I think you hit on something really important there, because it is so easy just to try random things, whether that's your marketing or your lifestyle or productivity or whatever, just kind of be all over the place doing lots of random things, but not really having a clear direction. I think That's something I've heard from a lot of people, is that having a clear direction in life is actually quite a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we'll all go through. But what you just mentioned is a good framework for finding that.
If I can add an anecdote to that, I was listening to Tim Ferriss interview Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was saying in the interview, people asked him why he was so confident when he was doing his bodybuilding competitions, and the way he answered it seemed like it was obvious. He says, "My confidence comes from my vision. I imagine myself on that podium holding the trophy with all of the other guys looking up to me." So he created these really compelling reasons for why he was doing what he wanted to do. He had this really strong vision for what he wanted, and he made all these things happen, all these amazing things happen in his life. And I think that's really the secret.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. And I think the concept of envisioning your goals, right? That's a very common among like Tony Robbins and all the people who recommend goal setting. It's one of the common elements that they venture forth is very helpful. I totally see the value in that, but one thing I've also realized, having tried that myself, just kind of on the flip side of things, like I'm not knocking it. It is quite helpful and valuable, especially in terms of inspiration. But one downside I've noticed is actually that when you, for example, if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger and you're envisioning that you're going to be at the top, you're going to be the best, you're going to win, and other people are going to be looking up at you, right? It creates expectation that that's the outcome. And then the positive side is you have like cognitive dissonance if you're not doing the right things to achieve that outcome. But then you also have that same cognitive dissonance if something goes wrong, and say you break your leg and you cannot achieve that because of outside variables and factors.
Yeah.
Well, there's still that like mental anguish of like, no, but I'm expecting to get there, and I can't, I didn't. And I think it's really easy to beat yourself up if you create that compelling vision and then something gets in the way of you achieving that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point you brought up. I mean, when I wrote my first book, obviously I wanted to write a best-selling book, but it's not on the same level as a book like The 4-Hour Workweek, obviously. But I learned so much, and I think that Tony Robbins, I listened to this old tape several years ago. He gave this great definition of success, and he says that I'm successful at anything I do if I give my best effort and I learn something from it. And that really hit home for me, because when you have those expectations, it makes it impossible to fail. And everything I do, I give it my best and I learn from it. And if I came up short, I do better next time. I published this book, and then I published 4 more books after that. And each time I learn more, I get better and better and better at it. And I think one thing that can help you to manage, those expectations too is, if you want to make a living as a writer, you don't need to, have a #1 New York Times bestseller. If you can just shoot for building a base of 1,000 true fans that buy everything that you produce, and you can monetize those fans and they purchase your books, then you can make a living as a writer. I mean, you can easily make $100,000 as a writer. So I think those two things kind of help to break down that, if you try to expect too much and you get disappointed, I find it to be really helpful.
Yeah, I think you just hit on something important there, and this is something I'm still trying to figure out. So I'm gonna throw out what I'm thinking now as maybe a way of defining this that might be more helpful. Because again, people are like, oh, you gotta envision your goals, and that'll help you achieve them. But there's the upside and the downside of that. There's like the caveat that goes with that, which I was just alluding to. So I think maybe envisioning your goals and imagining yourself successfully completing your goals isn't necessarily important for determining like the successful outcome, but it's more about the motivation to work towards it. Whereas kind of what you were just saying, the concept of success, what do you believe constitutes success? How do you actually define success to yourself? That should be more based on not what you're envisioning, but about the process itself, about improving, about taking action, about being confident and assertive and actually going for what you want. That process in itself is success. And then maybe the envisioning the outcome of your goals isn't about that expectation, but about the inspiration, the motivation, the emotional push to actually work towards it. So anyways, I'm just kind of making stuff up as I go along, but that sounds about right to me, maybe to make it more defined, because this is something that's kind of always been in the back of my head as I read these different goal setting and self-help type stuff. And it's just like, that seems like a really great idea and a really bad idea at the same time. So maybe that's a better way.
I can give you tell you an idea about where my motivation comes from as well, if that's interesting to you.
Sure, let's hear it.
So the secret for me is I think about death every day, because I read this article, about Bhutan and the Bhutanese and why they're the happiest people on earth. And what it said is that in Bhutan and countries like this, like Nepal, Tibet, they do this thing where they have this sky burial. So they'll put like a human body on a mountain, and then suddenly the vultures will come and they'll tear the body apart. So it might be shocking to someone who's from the Western world, but I think that in our cushy middle class suburban lifestyles, we don't really have much encounters with death. So we tend to think that this today is going to last indefinitely because death is so far away. But I find that when I think about where I'm going to end up, I think about death, then it really motivates me. That's where my motivation comes from, and I just want to make the most of today as I possibly can. So whether that's in my relationships, whether that's with my work, I want to make sure that I give every single thing I have, each day before my head hits the pillow, give everything that I have to give. And I find that to be highly motivating for me.
Nice. It's a really good example. I think that kind of mental contrasting with, things are good or bad or whatever, but at the very least, it's a lot better than being torn apart by vultures on a mountaintop, right?
Yeah, and two, I lost my father 3 years ago, and that was like the most defining experience of my life. And he was here physically before that, and then now he's burnt to ashes. His body doesn't even exist anymore. And so when I realized that I'm going to share the exact same fate, then I realized I have nothing to lose. Why do I need to hold back in any area? Whether it's my relationships, I need to give myself completely, love someone, or whether it's, with my business, I want to make sure I give it everything I have and not worry about failure, not worry about if I run out of money or worry about anything, because, we're all headed to the same place. So there's no reason, just like Steve Jobs says, there's no reason not to follow your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of as a side note, I find it interesting how you can take that kind of fatalism and view it very optimistically or also very pessimistically. Like, what's your interpretation? Is it like, everything's pointless, we're all going to die anyways? Or is it very inspiring that you might as well do everything you can to live life to the fullest? It's kind of interesting.
Good point.
But that's probably a tangent that gets way too metaphysical. But it's an interesting point to throw in, I suppose. You've gone through a lot of experiences. You've learned a lot of things, as you mentioned. I'm curious about where you're at now. What are some things that you're particularly good at and also that you still struggle with and you're trying to get better at?
Yeah, sure. So where I'm at now, I've worked really hard. I started my blog, openworldmag.com. Never really had my own blog before. So I started that around April of last year. So it's been about a year and a half. And I was really just kind of working and not really monetizing for a year and a half, not really making much money, just writing books, and kind of struggling along with that. But then I finally reached this point where I've gotten really good at what I'm doing, and I'm just having all these opportunities just kind of come out of nowhere. And that's kind of a really cool point. So a really cool point to be in. And I know Dan Kennedy, he calls it the miracle. It looks like success has happened overnight, but it took years of hard work and not making very much money to get to that point. So I'm really just trying to build up my platform as much as possible. And I just, as far as things I'm struggling with, I don't know. I've gotten really good at just optimizing the systems, optimizing everything, like the podcasting, the blogging. Now my struggle obviously is I've never launched a digital magazine before. So I have to learn about that. And I imagine that there's going to be all kinds of pitfalls, things I have to learn, but I'm just going to keep doing it. I know my way forward. I'm just going to keep putting value out there, just try to be present everywhere I can, get as much visibility as I can. And I have faith that eventually I'm going to reach the other side where, things are going to work out really well.
Nice. And so if people are interested in finding out more about your digital magazine, your blog, your books, where's the best place to find out more about you and what you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to my blog, openworldmag.com. If you click on the podcast category, I have all my podcasts on there. Feel free to go through and listen. You can also connect with me on Twitter or Facebook, just facebook.com//dandanflood. Same ID for Twitter. You can also look me up on Amazon. I have all of my books on there. Most of them are around $2.99. So if you're interested in any of those, I have a really good book on email outreach, which is really good for digital nomads and anyone who wants to scale up a business. I think that email outreach is the most effective marketing tool out there. You can also check out Hack Sleep if you're having any sleep issues, or if you just want to be more productive and learn better ways to organize your day. I highly recommend that book.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing lots of knowledge and your experiences. And I hope everybody who's listening today learned a lot from it. Thanks again for coming on, Danny.
I really appreciate you having me here, Grant. And I hope we can get together soon. We're both in Thailand and do some rock climbing again.
Sounds good, man. Chat soon.
Hey entrepreneurs and experts, I just wanted to thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you learned at least one new big idea that helps you evolve your skills and gets you closer to monetizing your expertise and creating that successful knowledge business. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on iTunes and Stitcher, and check out myepodcast.com for all episodes as well as the tips and tricks mentioned in this episode. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.